Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today let's review Season 4 of Classic Doctor Who. This is the first season where we had a really big shake-up in the formula of the show. We'd had companions come and go, but this is the season where we had our first regeneration, the first replacement of an actor playing the Doctor. And of course, the second Doctor being so drastically different from the first Doctor. And then this is where we start to see the formula of the show itself change in terms of how the stories work. So we start off with the Smugglers. And I like the Smugglers. I haven't actually watched the Smugglers, but I've read the novelization. And I very much enjoy the novelization of the Smugglers quite a bit. This, of course, was actually filmed as part of the Season 3 production block and held over for the transmission of Season 4. It's nice. I enjoy it. I like the kind of pirate life. It's a little hazy in my mind because I've only read it the one time. And I have seen, of course, the few surviving clips from it. But I did like it a lot. I always like a nice little pirate adventure. Why not? I enjoy Curse of the Black Spot even to an extent. So I like the Smugglers. I thought it was really, really good. And then, of course, we move into the 10th planet, which is not only Hartnell's final story as the main Doctor, and of course the first regeneration, but also the first appearance of the Cybermen, one of the main classic Doctor Who villains. It's a great introduction to the Cybermen. I love their design. I love this design. This is one of my favorite Cybermen designs. I love the voice they have in this. I love the creepiness factor of the Cybermen in this story that's very seldom ever matched in classic Doctor Who, where you really go, these things used to be people who are trying to mend themselves as best they can, but as we all know, you can't mend people. But they've replaced so much of themselves with mechanics that they kind of lost their humanity. I love that the Cybermen are taller. I love the fact these Cybermen truly have no emotion, unlike some other Cybermen. And don't get me wrong, those Cybermen are excellent. Sometimes. I do like the emotional Cybermen sometimes. They're quite excellent. But I love the actual emotionless Cybermen we get in this story. You get that they are doing what they think is best for Mondos and their planet. The first 2 episodes of the 10th planet are really good. I love the energy. I love the casting. I love the tension. I love everything going on in it. It kind of falls apart in the second half, through no fault of the production team. Episode 3 suffers from not having Hartnell there. Of course, William Hartnell was taken ill at the time and had to miss the episode. I do like the fact that some of his dialogue goes to one of the other scientists, the one with the glasses. I like him a lot. I really like the actor playing the scientist with the glasses. He did really good. And Ben gets a little more to do in this episode because of that as well. And it's nice to see him and Ben working together. I do like Ben and Polly in this story a lot. The guy playing the general is also really good. The actors playing all 3 of the astronauts are doing a good job. So I like a lot of the casting in this. Episode 4 is a bit of a letdown just because it's animation. A lot of you know I love having a final episode intact. That's a big deal for me. If I have a final episode intact, one of the things I like about Wheel in Space is I have the final episode intact. So it's frustrating going through 3 surviving episodes just to have an animated episode at the end. Now, I love Planet 55's animation style. It looks really good. The characters look like the characters, although some of the camera work doesn't quite work. There's some close-ups, some shots done that feel a little out of place, though it didn't bother me as bad on my last watch through as it has in the past. It just kind of goes downhill at the end. The ending kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't understand how the power drain causes a feedback loop that destroys Mondos. I don't quite get why that happens, honestly. But the regeneration scene is also really good in surviving form and animated form. I'm glad we have the surviving footage of that. It's a little underwhelming for me, while still being a good story. Then we have Power of the Daleks, which is one of the best Doctor Who stories ever made, one of the best post-regeneration stories ever made. I don't quite know. I think the best post-regeneration story might be 11th Hour or Power of the Daleks. It's really hard for me to pick between them. They're both really, really good. I can be absolutely fine, and as soon as I start to record, I can't stop coughing. I don't know what it is about it with the actual recording. As soon as I put the camera in front of me. It's a great introduction to Troughton, and Troughton just sells it. One of the things I really like is just how different the second Doctor is from the first. Instead of casting someone that looks like Hartnell and could act like Hartnell and try to do a Hartnell impersonation, they went a completely different route. And I think that's one of the reasons the show has endured as long as it has, is they went with a totally different type of character. And Patrick Troughton, what he's doing with the Doctor in this story and in his run as a whole, is so good. So good. Of course, I love the Daleks here. This is one of the best Dalek stories ever made. David Whittaker gets the Daleks. He understands the Daleks, how they're manipulative, how they're deceitful, how they're cunning, and how they're evil. I absolutely love how he writes them and the actions they take here. I like all of the internal squabbling going on. I love the little B plot of one group of the humans trying to overthrow the other group of humans. I really like the one woman who's in on it. She's something, isn't she? She's a piece of work, that one. I like her. The actress playing her, just from the animation, I like her. Lesterson is a neat character, as we see him going from overconfident to paranoid, knowing the Doctor is right, to just losing it, absolutely losing it. I love the descent of Lesterson as a character and everything he goes through. I absolutely think that's well done. The guy playing Bragan does a great job. The guy playing the actual leader of the colony before Bragan's doing a good job. I really like everything going on here. And the animation is really good as well. Just Power of the Daleks is a must-see. And for it to be completely animated and to be able to hold up that well is a testament to just how well of a masterpiece David Whittaker wrote. Now, the Highlanders, I've read and seen the reconstruction. I like it. It's funny. It's a great historical. Really the last pure historical we'd get for a long time. Again, this is where you really see the formula of Doctor Who starting to change, where they get away from alternating futuristic stories with pure historicals, which had kind of been the norm for the most part up to this point. You see them start getting away from that, and you start to see stuff after this start to happen more in contemporary times or future stories. But I like the Highlanders. It's got some really funny bits in it. Ben gets some stuff to do. We find out Ben is a great swimmer. I like how Polly takes this other Scottish girl under her wing and kind of helps bring out her individuality. You see the other girl grow as a person. I like that. And of course the introduction to Jamie. Jamie's one of my favorite companions. I enjoyed that as well. So it's just a fun story. I like the Highlanders. I hope it gets animated one day. But I don't find the recon too hard to get through, honestly. A little hard to get through. All recons are to one extent or another. But I find it easier to get through, much like Galaxy 4, which I reviewed recently. And I really enjoy that recon as well. But especially for Highlanders to be completely missing, it's a pretty good recon. Then we move into, let's see, which one is after that? The Underwater Menace. Now, I like The Underwater Menace. I watched it for the first time when the animation came out, and I enjoyed it. I think it's an underrated story. I don't think it's the best of the season or anything, but I found it a lot of fun. I thought the animation itself was really good, and I was able to watch the animation with the surviving episodes without it being overly jarring. There are some differences, but I didn't find it overly jarring. My willing suspension of disbelief was easily able to roll with the changes between the two, because of course the animation does take its own liberties, which I don't necessarily agree with since half the stories still exist, but they don't bother me. I just roll with them and keep going. But I watched the black and white animation with the surviving episodes, since half the story survives, episodes 2 and 3. But it's a nice story about Atlantis, and Zaroff's so over the top, but I'm loving every second of it. This Underwater Menace is a great story if you don't take it too seriously. If you know its reputation and you go into Underwater Menace knowing it's a bit of a B-movie camp and that it's not like Power of the Daleks or Genesis of the Daleks or City of Death, Pyramids of Mars, anything like S tier like that, you can have a great time with it. And I did. I found it a lot of fun. Again, as always, Patrick Troughton's performance is phenomenal. Why do you want to blow up the earth? I love him at times. I just do. And then you move into, what is it, the moon base after that, I believe? You guys know I love the moon base. It's one of my favorite Cybermen stories. It's one of my top 2 favorite Cybermen stories. The surviving episodes are great. It's my favorite performance of Patrick Troughton in the role, probably. The animated episodes are really good. This is where Planet 55 really nailed it with their animation. I really wish they'd done the animation for Underwater Menace back in the day. Because I feel like all the little problems their animations had, they perfect here. And I think if we'd gotten another 1 or 2 animations out of them, they would have been gold. Because the animations here in episodes 1 and 3 look really good, especially with the Cybermen. They really do give the Cybermen kind of a menacing look. And while I'm not the biggest fan of the Cybermen design and voices in this story, the animation still gives them a nice menacing look. And again, captures the characters' likenesses really well. But the surviving episodes are phenomenal. And then you have some wonderful dialogue. Troughton has his... there are some corners of the universe speech, which is ever so good, an amazing speech. And of course that episode 2 cliffhanger, which I've talked about several times before on the channel. Did your man such in here? I love that cliffhanger so much. It just has a good atmosphere and tone to it that I really enjoy. And I really feel sorry for the spacemen in that rocket that's got sent into the sun. Like, I really wish Doctor Who would do something to save them at some point. And then we move into the Macroterra, and you guys know I love the Macroterra. That's the Moonbase and the Macroterra are my 2 favorite animations so far. Moonbase is my favorite pre-Power of the Daleks animation, and Macroterra is my favorite post-Power of the Daleks animation. It's just really good. I feel like the animation for this one has a quality that has not been topped. The fluidity of movement is very impressive here. Body language is done well. Facial expressions feel natural. The characters move the way I feel the characters would move, especially Troughton, which is not always easy to get right, but he does so much with his facial expressions and so much with his body language. And I feel like they do a fair approximation of that in this story. I love the liberties taken. The loss of the rough and tumble scene is a loss, of course, but it's not that big a deal to me. I love how they have realized the macra in this and actually made them impressive and intimidating and spooky. That's done really well. Some of the other liberties, like instead of Jamie finding the one guy's body, he just finds his goggles. I like that. I think that's a great choice to make. The recon of it's still a fine watch, by the way. I didn't mind the recon when I went through it, but I do prefer the animation. And I don't have a preference between the color animation and the black and white animation. They're both phenomenally good. They have different feels to them. I believe the black and white animation in this one is also in 16:9, just like the color version. I don't think they cropped it. But they both have different feels to them. Like tonally, both versions of the animation, they have a different tone to them, but they're both excellent. They're both excellent. And I really enjoy both of them. I really feel like the animation for Macroterra has done for Macroterra what Recovering Enemy of the World did for Enemy of the World. Of course, Enemy of the World, everybody didn't think much of it, and then it was found. We all got to watch it, and the opinion of the story has risen drastically since it was recovered. I feel like the animation's done that for Macroterra. I feel like Macroterra was kind of a story nobody really talked about, other than knowing it didn't have the best production design. It was kind of a, American B-movie 50s schlock, kind of. But then the animation came out, and since they did take the creative license they did with it, I feel like the Macroterra is held in higher appreciation by people who like this era of the show more. I think it's much more approachable, and I think it works better. Some of the incidental music doesn't always jive with the newer animation, to be fair. It doesn't always fit, but it's not something that I find to be a problem. It's just something I make kind of a subconscious note of in the back of my head for reviewing purposes. Okay, the music doesn't quite jive with what's going on with the screen, but it's fine. It's still good, and it's very enjoyable, to where the Macroterra is pretty high up on my list of Doctor Who stories I like. Next on the list is the faceless ones, which again I never saw until the animation came out. And I like it well enough. I think you could argue it's a little long at 6 parts, but I will also say that my appreciation for this story has gone up because I have rewatched it several times. The surviving episodes look really good, and I like the fact the animations fit in with the surviving episodes well. The animation really only takes liberties, I think, in scenes that aren't in the surviving episodes, which tends to be more toward the latter half of the story, like when they're in the spaceship and stuff. And I think that's fair. I like the fact that they keep the animation pretty true to the surviving episodes with what we see in the surviving episodes. But once they kind of get away from those areas toward the end game, they kind of go for bigger is better. And I feel like that works really well. My minor nitpick is that the chameleons, when they're in their natural state, they don't look as faceless as they should. They still have kind of faces where I wish they looked more like their original design. Maybe they just felt that wouldn't work in animation well. But we've seen pictures of what they look like, and I would have liked them to have kept that look, the more actual faceless look. Then, of course, there's that scene outside when one of the disguised changelings is fighting with one of the girls, and the fight just looks a little weird in the animation. I guess they didn't have time to do it the way they wanted. But I think most of the things look good. The animation is a step down from Macroterra while still being good. Troughton's face isn't quite perfect, but still looks good. Jamie's the same way. I find it enjoyable. Maybe a tad overly long, but definitely enjoyable. And then we have Evil of the Daleks, which is fantastic. Evil of the Daleks might be an episode too long. Let's be honest. I think you could have done it in 6 parts. But I like it because you have like the first episode or so, which takes place in 1966. Then you have a lot of it taking place in 1866. Then you have the final 2 episodes really taking place on Skaro. And David Whittaker once again gets the Daleks right. Their manipulative nature and how they're trying to lure the Doctor in so that he can find the human factor, thus so they can get the Dalek factor. I do love the friendly Daleks. I love the humanized Daleks. It's amazing to me how just saying the Dalek voices a little different can completely change the tone and feel of the Daleks. You know, I like that. Dizzy, Doctor, Dizzy, Dally. They're adorable, the human Daleks. They're so adorable. Where at the same time, the normal Daleks can be so terrifying that there's so little between those two dynamics, between the friendly Daleks and the terrifying Daleks, voice-wise. That fascinates me. The animation is really good. It's a step up over Faceless Ones while still not quite matching Macroterra's, but really good. Troughton's likeness is good while still not quite being as good as Macroterra's. I like Jamie's a lot. Victoria has a really good likeness as well. I still love the 3D models for the Daleks like they did with Power. Like I said, every now and then the movement or something will look a little off to me, but it's still a really good animation. I like the black and white and the color version. It's odd. Like the first 4 or 5 episodes, I think I prefer in black and white, so I can watch the surviving episode 2 with it, which fits with it pretty well. But the last 2 episodes, once they get on Skaro, really pop in color. So it's almost like I have to change the color, like, once they get on Skaro. It sounds weird, but those last 2 episodes look better in color to me. But I'm fine watching either version of it. I still wish it was about an episode shorter, but it's, again, one of the best Dalek stories, though not as good as Power. It's a really good season. There, again, a lot of change going on in season 4 with you have the entire cast change out, actually. The cast we start with in Smugglers is gone by Evil of the Daleks, and we have a whole new group of people on board. But of course, we start out basically with Ben, Polly, and the First Doctor, and Hartnell leaves in 10th Planet. We get Troughton joining at the end of it and Power of the Doctor. We have Jamie joining in the Highlanders. We have Ben and Polly leaving at the end of the Faceless Ones. And then, and I still feel like their exits handled pretty well, despite the way their contracts work. The fact they came back for that little bit in episode 6, I think their exits handled pretty well. And then, of course, we have Victoria coming on at the end of episode, or right there, during Evil of the Daleks. So we have a completely different TARDIS team at the end of season 4 than we did at the beginning of season 4. So there's a whole big change there. And then the tone of the stories have shifted. The format of the show has shifted. Again, steering away from pure historicals and leaning more into contemporary stories or a lot of Base Under Siege. We really start seeing the Base Under Siege stuff start getting introduced in this season, really with 10th Planet. But we also have that with Moonbase and the Macroterra, especially as well, where you kind of have the Base Under Siege stuff going on, which of course will be a huge staple of season 5 also. So a lot of changes to the Doctor Who formula came about in this season. Without season 4, the show would be very different. There's a big difference between where the show is in season 3 and where at the end of season 3 even, and where the show is at the beginning of season 5, because we had so many changes in season 4. Now, I'm going to add something new that I haven't been doing in these, but I'm going to start doing these from now on. Let me get my notepad. Very quickly, I'm going to rank the stories. I'm not going to really talk about it in detail because I just did that, but we're going to go ahead and rank the 9 stories that make up season 4. At the bottom is the Faceless Ones, which is still good. Let me be clear. Season 4 is my favorite season of 60s Doctor Who. I've talked about this before. My favorite season of 60s Doctor Who is season 4. I absolutely love it. Every story this season I enjoy. I don't think there's any bad ones at all. They're all varying degrees of good, great, amazing, etc. At the bottom, I have the Faceless Ones. I like it. It runs a little long, although I'm a little kinder towards it on rewatch. It's one of those. I like what's going on in it. It's just not one I go back to often. When it first came out, it kind of was, but not so much now. But it's still really good. Next on the list is the 10th Planet in 8th place. Again, I love the first half. The second half just kind of lets it down, but I love a lot of the concepts it's introducing here. Bringing in the Cybermen for the first time, and this version of them is very good. This emotionalist version of them, and with an excellent physical design. And of course, the transition from the first Doctor into the second Doctor, the first regeneration story. Next on the list is the Underwater Menace, which again, I like. It's not S-tier Doctor Who, but it's fun, and if you go in expecting B or C-tier Doctor Who, and you just decide to have a good time with it, kind of like the Horns of Nimon, it's actually a pretty good, fun story. Next on the list is the Smugglers. I really hope this is the one that gets animated next. I mean, there's several I'd be fine with, but if they do Smugglers, I'm really excited. It's the reason why I haven't watched the Recon yet. Of course, I've read the novelization, but I'm holding off on the Recon since we seem to be thinking that this is going to be the next one animated. Hopefully we'll get an announcement on that soon. But this one's really fun. I tend to like pirates in Doctor Who, so. Next, in 5th place is The Highlanders, which again, it's fun. It's funny. I enjoy it. It makes me laugh. I love what Troughton's doing here. The novelization is great, and the Recon is fun. Even if this one doesn't get animated anytime soon, I still like it. I still have such a high opinion of it. And even if it's a 3D animation, I hope it gets it at some point. Number 4 on the list, and 2, 3, and 4 flip around. Like, honestly, you can pretty much interchange 2, 3, and 4 for me. Like, I'll be honest, I'm looking at the list right now going, 2, 3, and 4 are basically interchangeable. Number 4, I have the Moonbase. Again, one of my favorite Cybermen stories of all time, and a wonderful performance from Troughton. Number 3, I have Macroterra, because again, I love that animation. I enjoy the story, but I love that animation. It just really makes me enjoy watching the story. I have 3 different versions of this story I can watch. The Recon, the black and white animation, the color animation. I like all 3. Number 2 is Evil of the Daleks, which again, I'm looking at it going, does that need to be 3 or 4? Really, my only complaint is the animation isn't quite as good as the Macroterras, while still being good, and that it might be an episode too long. It's really good. It's really, really good. And then, of course, number 1 on the list is Power of the Doctor. I love Power of the Doctor. One of my favorite Dalek stories of all time. One of my 2 favorite Dalek stories of all time. It and Dalek from Series 1 constantly vie for the number 1 spot in Dalek stories. They're both excellent pieces of Doctor Who that really are written by writers that understand the Daleks and understand the Doctor actually really well. Troughton's really good in this one. That's not an easy thing to do, to introduce a new Doctor and introduce the concept of a new Doctor with, of course, the first post-regeneration story as well. Really, really good stuff going on in Power. So that's how I would rank them. It is such a tragedy that so much of this season is missing, with only 10 out of 43 episodes surviving. That's less than a quarter of the episodes. There are 43 episodes this season, only 10 survived. 3 of those are the 10th Planet, episodes 1, 2, 3. Really, Troughton, of the 43 episodes, 35 of them are Troughton's from Power on. And only 7 of those 35 exist, which is, what is that, a fifth, I believe. Yeah, a fifth. Yeah, 1/5 of his episodes survive from this season. That's sad. And none of his stories from this season are more than half complete, with, of course, the Moon Base and Underwater Menace being half complete. And then all we get after that from him are episodes 1 and 3 of The Faceless Ones, making it a third complete, and episode 2 of Evil of the Daleks. That's it, sadly, for surviving footage. I'm glad we have at least those, but I wish we had more. But luckily, so much of this season has been filled in with animation. They have spent quite a bit of time focusing on season 4 for animation, and because of that, only 2 stories are incomplete now, being the Smugglers and, of course, the Highlanders, and that we can enjoy a nice visual representation of all of the other stories. That's pretty fascinating for me. And I think that's really helped me appreciate this season, because several of these stories I never saw until the animations were released. So I'm really grateful to the animations, since this has become my favorite 60 season of Doctor Who, and one of my favorite seasons of Doctor Who. I just love everything going on in it. Easily my favorite Troughton season. Good stuff going on. So I want to know what you think of season 4 of classic Doctor Who. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I certainly appreciate the support, and it helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and it's much appreciated. I also have a P.O. box. If there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review, I am trying to start collecting more of these standard editions right here. They're starting to look really good on the shelf, so I would love to get some more of those if anyone wants to send them. I also have links to my Amazon wish list down there, which have some of these on it, and my Amazon UK wish list, which also has some of those on it, if anyone wants to check those out. I also have a Patreon. If you would like to support me on that, I want to give a shout out to one of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney. I appreciate his support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. Each and every one of you are very much appreciated. Some of y'all have been with me for quite a while on there. Very, very appreciated. And most importantly, thank you for watching. Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today let's review Season 4 of Classic Doctor Who. The first season where we really saw things starting to shake up a bit. This is, of course, the season where we first got our, well, we...